Well, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are, and welcome back to another chat with Matt. Let's just remind us all about the intent of these sessions. Um, First and foremost, what we're trying to do is give you some insight in relation to what we do in Mentor Group around sales transformation and driving productivity for your sales teams. By listening or watching these podcasts, we want to give you some things that you can practically do that are going to help your business straight away. So today I'm joined again by Steve Promisel. So Steve's our resident expert around all things data analytics with a rich career history in that field and sales operations. So Steve, I know you're a busy man. Thank you for coming back to the chat.
Sure thing, Matt. Good to be here.
Good man. And how are you today?
Doing pretty good. Doing fine. Thank you. You?
Good man. So let's dig straight into this topic. And you and I are very different in terms of our thinking. I'm more big picture. You're much more analytical. Give me a sense before we go into any other specifics. Why do you think analytics are so important today in sales transformation?
Interesting question, Matt. I mean, basically, when I look at analytics, it applies a sort of a real world perspective on how things are going. Now, oftentimes we make decisions based on how we feel things are going. What analytics tells you is what's actually happening. And then you can combine the two. It's what we like to call combine the art and the science. To combine the two to come up with excellent decision making.
Okay, so whereas the art will tell you what you think is happening, the science will tell you what's actually happening, and then you can start to make decisions based on what you find.
Exactly right.
Mm-hmm. Does that suggest then that there's a problem with the art?
No.
Or do you need both?
You need both. I mean, the art's incomplete, the science is incomplete. You could look at data, for example, and make completely wrong decisions based on how you understand data, and your experience that you bring into the picture is what makes the data worthwhile, worth even looking at and making those good decisions. It's the combination.
Okay, so bring some art to this, bring it to life a little bit. Tell me what a typical use case that you would work on, mm-hmm. and how that would help me if I'm a CRO or a sales director with my sales team.
Sure. Probably the things like examples I like to use relate to go-to-market planning and territory optimization. So if you think about go-to-market planning, it's about where should you be doing business, so the geography, what verticals or industries you should be doing business in, and then what segments, big companies, small companies. And so you can make that initial decision and say, something based on our capability, our product, based on where we have people, based on our partner network, we can make decisions on where we should be selling our product. And what's interesting is that the science will tell you, for example, you should be putting more reps in a particular location because there's more opportunity there. Then you look at your business model today and you say, something, my headquarters is based in Singapore, but my opportunities are in other parts of Asia or Australia. So do I have the right resources in the right place at the right time? So but the art could tell you, well, I've got more opportunity because I've got better relationships in Singapore. So therefore that's where I should be putting my people. But the science tells you you're in the wrong country. So you've got to combine the two and to make good business decisions from that perspective. From a territory optimization, it's the same situation. You could say, you can create a perfect set of territories that are equal in potential. You can then apply the similar quotas to each of those territories because they each have the same potential. But then you look at those territories and you say, the odds are, based on my understanding of the competitive situation or the rep assignments or the relationships we have with those customers or opportunities in those customers, that the science tells you they're equal, the art tells you that one's a little bit better than the other. So when you combine the two together, you start with the science as a starting point, and then you augment with the art to get you to a final decision, which oftentimes gives you the most optimal approach.
So let me push you a bit on this, because as a seller myself and been in many roles where I've held a quota or I've ran teams that have held quotas, what you were saying there was quite interesting, because if you combine the art and the science, particularly from a territory perspective, what I heard was you shouldn't really be applying a one size fits all, particularly when you're targeting and setting quotas, because the art and the science would tell you that it's never going to be a level playing field across territories. What's your view on that?
Well, I've done it both ways. I've seen situations where every rep gets the same commissionable revenue opportunity, or the same variable compensation. And I've seen scenarios where you've got, for the same level, of course, senior versus more junior. And then I've seen situations where the quotas could be very, very large for one rep with a larger opportunity and a larger variable commission opportunity. And then others would be smaller based on the opportunity. Now you have to bring in geography. Even though we're in COVID land, it's not going to last forever. So, you got to get back out and see your customers. So geography plays a role. Commonality in customers play a role. So if you've got, say you're in New York City, it's easy to create a territory of financial services customers. If you have that same territory in Austin, Texas, for example, in the United States, or in London, financial services, no problem. In Manchester, maybe not so much. Same thing in almost any other country. Frankfurt, easy. Munich, not so much, in terms of creating a financial services territory. So you might create different sized territories based on opportunities that are based on what I said originally: geography, industry, and then company size.
Okay, makes sense. So a lot more thinking needs to go into making these decisions, whether you're in the go-to-market phase or you're in the annual planning phase around territory. Let's transition into performance then, and talk about the impact that data and analytics can have on seller performance. Give me a little bit on that, if you will.
So there's a couple of variables here that I like to look at. First is just the obvious, which is, are people making their numbers? So if you know that somebody's making their numbers, the first question is, did I do this in advance, or have I done this so far this year? What have I looked at from past years, stuff like that? And that tells you whether there's an opportunity to make some adjustments. What I like to do is combine that attainment against what things are happening right now. So how have you been doing this year so far? Well, that's an obvious one. That's with attainment. But what's your pipeline look like? What's your tenure? So if you're comparing people now, so group in tenure bands, or group by the type of role that you're in. And essentially what I like to do is create these scatter charts that say attainment on the y-axis versus, say, pipeline on the x-axis. And then that will tell me that the people that have the greatest pipeline and the greatest attainment, top right, are my superstars, typically. They've been successful and they'll continue to be successful. People on the bottom left, not so much, right? And then people that are in the top left, those are the guys, the folks that are potentially sandbagging. They've made their year and they've shut down for the year. We used to call them lifestyle reps, because they've made how much they want to make and they're done. They'll start again next year.
Yeah.
And then the ones on the far right are the ones you really want to look at, because they could be superstars. They've been slow, but for the year so far, but they've got so much potential with the right kind of kick. So here's the message. Because looking at reps this way, you can then just make decisions based on, in terms of guidance, training, coaching, that you can do based on where they fit in terms of that scale.
Okay, that makes sense. And give me your sort of high-level view on what a proposition called Sales Performance Diagnostic. What is it? How does it work?
Yeah, the sales performance diagnostic that we do with our customers, we use a combination of our own experience, the art, if you will, with the science, which is using an app that we have developed in ClickSense that allows us to do essentially 6 different things. It allows us to look at go-to-market. It allows us to look at various business trends, whether it's revenue, profitability, number of accounts sold, number of opportunities, whatever that is. Coverage, one of the things we really like to look at is, do we have the right people in the right places, and are those people performing? So you could say, yep, we've hired up to our expectations, but they're not doing very well. So it doesn't matter, because if you look at the total full-time equivalent numbers against their potential, you might have a huge gap and not realize it. So I always like to compare performance against coverage. And then effectiveness, talk a little bit about that, but how are they doing? Are they over discounting? What's their forecast accuracy? We look at things like that, deal progression, things like that. Then we also look at enablement. Are we training these people well? And if we're not, is there a correlation between effective training and performance? And there should be. If there's not, then there's either a problem with the training or there's a problem with something else that we need to dig through. But the data allows you to ask questions. And data doesn't tell you the answer, but allows you to ask questions that may lead to an answer, or it may lead to more questions. But that's what analytics really does. And the last thing I like to look at is how technology is being utilized. So if, for example, it takes 20 minutes to execute a quote, that has a significant impact on productivity. So we like to look at those situations. People don't use the CRM because there are too many old, legacy fields that a different team wants to have in there, or they're asking for information that doesn't drive the deal forward. So we like to look at all of these different uses of technology, and then that's the last piece of the puzzle. You put it all together, it creates a set of recommendations for next steps. And those next steps could be, well, you don't have a very strong methodology, so let's take a look, sales methodologies, let's take a look at that. You don't have a clear direction on sales compensation, let's take a look at that. There's a lot of different scenarios we could do in just pure metrics. Let's take this initial readout, this initial set of output, and let's operationalize it. And then we can look at it quarterly or monthly and then compare. Here's the baseline that we created at the beginning. What's happening quarter over quarter over quarter. And then the last really, really cool thing that we do is, because Mentor focuses so much on sales enablement and creating really world-class enablement solutions using technology, we can take all the information that we learn, all the data, and push it into a learning environment. And the learning environment can then make recommendations on what training will work best for various situations. So it's a full-scale solution that we offer to our clients, and it really helps to drive a lot more value to the customers over time.
And I think what's really interesting about it is it allows you to be laser focused on the areas that maybe you didn't realize you needed to focus on at all. Exactly. And does it through, as you said right at the beginning, the art and the science. So that's really interesting. Yep. But Steve, as we get to the end of our time today, and I think maybe we do another chat another day where we do a demo of the sales performance diagnostic, if you will be willing to spare the time. Yeah. But as we give one final takeaway, if you're a chief revenue officer, a sales director watching or listening to our chat today, and you could give one piece of advice to them about data and analytics so that they can really help their sales team, what advice would you give?
It's funny you say that, because there's a pile of great, really, intuitive and awesome recommendations that I can provide. But I always go back to the basics, and that is the old adage, garbage in, garbage out. Make sure your data is as clean as possible. Focus on data hygiene first and foremost. And then once you have that, you could do so many more things from that point forward.
Perfect advice. Yeah, perfect advice. So, Steve, thank you for your time, as always.
My pleasure.
And if you're watching and listening, how good is your data? If you look in your CRM system today, is it clean? Is it healthy? Is it sufficient? Is it going to give you what you need to drive the right kind of conversations with your sales professionals in your organization? If not, get in touch with us by all means. And thank you for taking the time to listen today. In the meantime, as always, please stay safe, and we'll see you soon on another chat with Matt. Thank you.